Welcome to the Light Up Podcast. I am your host, Amy Wilkinson. I'm an intuitive guide and soul mentor. And through this podcast, you will receive conscious conversations, powerful downloads, and soul-stirring activations that will both support and inspire you to tap into your intuition, follow that higher calling, and live a life aligned with your soul. Because you are here to co-create a life rich in abundance, freedom, and deep joy, and to unleash who you truly came here to be. And we're here to help you discover how to access that. So let's dive on in and light up. Hey guys, welcome back to Light Up. How are you doing? How is your day? Middle of the week. The sun is shining here in Queensland. I hope it is shining in your world, whether literal or just shining in your heart and you feel good today. I'm really excited. Yesterday, I had the great pleasure of sitting down with Mark Breadner, and we had an amazing conversation, which I'm about to share with you all. I loved this conversation. I love this episode. Mark holds an incredible wealth of knowledge and life experience that he brings to the table. He is an extremely passionate, long-serving yoga educator and spiritual teacher with 45 years dedicated to the practice. So he's recognized as the teacher's teacher, and he's the real deal when it comes to his down-to-earth approach in bringing ancient teachings into modern world, which is such an art and such a skill for teachers to be able to transmit these immense spiritual teachings into a digestible and an integratable format, which he does so well. He spends his time now in Bali with his wife, Christina, supporting and educating teachers and practitioners to live and embrace the spirit of yoga, to evolve in their understanding and in their consciousness, and to make them better equipped in their capacity to serve in today's world, which is, the work he's doing is needed. So I love this episode. I got my husband to listen to it right away. My husband produces my podcast and he also produces other podcasts, so I know this was one of his personal favorites. I needed to listen to it again. It's just such a joy to hear the way Mark shares his grounded wisdom and no fuss approach to awakening, which is what we're all here for on this earth plane. So whether you're a yoga teacher or a yoga practitioner, or you're simply on this quest to know more and to look and feel and sense beyond the illusion, beyond the veil, you are going to get so much out of this episode. Make sure you stay right to the end. There is so much goodness packed in, which is really quite life-changing. So I'm going to hand it over now. Let's dive in. I hope you enjoy. Okay, so welcome, Mark Breadner. Lovely to connect with you over the seas. Welcome.
Yes, nice to be here. Nice to
Nice.
be virtually in Australia.
Yeah, well, I was reflecting back to the time when I met you. So I did a training with you. I was fortunate enough to do a training with you last, I think it was September, when you were over in Australia, over in Brisbane. And I did it was a breath weekend. And I met you and your beautiful wife, Christina. And we can talk a little bit more about the breath later on, and also about, this incredible life that you've created for yourself over there. But I want to start because I heard a little bit about your journey during that training, and what really stood out and impressed me was just so how long you have been practicing yoga, how long you've been a teacher for. So I'd love to start there about what really called you onto this path, because this is your life's work, right? And I'm sure it has changed and developed over time. So what was it that called you onto this path? Can you share a little bit about your journey to get here?
Yeah, well, I was fortunate. My mum was one of the first yoga teachers in Australia. She was teaching from the late 50s, and she taught at home in our rumpus room downstairs. And I grew up in Cronulla, which is a blue collar town, surfing town, and it was kind of a weird thing, yoga. And it's kind of weird for my mum too, because she was very religious, and yoga and religion didn't really fit together. So it's kind of a weird setup. Nevertheless, it was super popular. She taught 2 nights a week, I think Tuesdays and Thursdays, and it was packed. It was all women.
Mm.
You never saw a guy anywhere near the place. But I started when I was 5 because it was something to do, but really from the beginning, I just got it. There was something, I don't know if it's past lives or whatever, but I just remembered and I understood and I felt better. And I also noticed that the interaction of the women afterwards with me was very different. I just kind of noticed the connection. So I was very fortunate in that sense to have it. And also mum was taught in a more complete system than what some of the commercialized yoga is. And she always taught the whole thing. There was kriyas involved. There was always meditation, pranayama. There's pratyahara exercises, looking at the colored ribbons and seeing the color behind it on the whiteboard, and all of those sort of aspects. So I was very fortunate in that way. I was very lucky, and sort of gone onwards from there. It's always been my work. I started apprenticing with my mum when I was 15 at Sutherland Hospital, the local hospital, and we were working with Down syndrome children and asthmatic children at the hospital, and
Mm.
fantastic results. And it's like I want to do this forever, and I want to keep understanding how this works. And I started my own teaching when I was 18, and then there's been a whole journey from there.
It's so amazing because it could have gone the other way. You know, I've got boys and my boys are 10, right? And I know with kids, and it's the same with I've got a 14-year-old daughter who doesn't tend to practice with me like I would love her to. And sometimes, you know, when you're growing up in a household with yoga, it can kind of put you off and it can go the other way. So I reckon, as you said, there was probably something very innate in you, whether, you know, it probably was that you've done this before. I mean, I can tell that about you, Mark. But it's incredible that you then took that pathway and it continued on for you as well. So this has been your life's work, right? I mean, you started when you were 18, and I mean, I just think that that's so incredible and inspirational. I'll try and get my kids into it a little bit more. You know
Yes.
what I think is interesting when we look at this path of yoga, you know, and you know, I've done many years of teaching as well. I've been a teacher for about 15 or 16 years. And in initially learning about yoga and about the philosophy of yoga, you know, you talk about this path of samadhi and this kind of elusive path of enlightenment that many are searching for when they go down this yogic path, you know. So I'm wondering, Mark, can you speak to this in terms of how do we simplify this? Like, what does it actually mean for us today? I'm going straight in there. Like, what does it mean for us today in the modern world? How can we start to bring it in, and rather than it being something, because I know initially when I studied yoga it felt really elusive, it felt like, oh, you know, this isn't something that I can achieve in this lifetime. How can we make it so that this becomes more accessible for us, or is it accessible for us? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, it's accessible. I mean, there's this common saying that we're searching for, or we're looking really hard for something that we already are, that we already have. You know, we're looking for it, but it's already there. And so yoga is the process of being able to shine the light on that and be able to see it. And really, consciousness is a very simple process. Health is a very simple process, but it's been broken down into the parts. It's been commercialized down into the parts. And so if you don't understand the whole system and how it all works together, then it's very easy to get lost or feel like you're on the right track and then hit a roadblock. So a big part of my life has been going, you know, backwards and forwards to India, working with yoga masters and asking this question of how does it work? How does it fit together? And when they would give me answers, they would give me answers. I'd ask why. Like, why is that? And I need to be able to explain this to Westerners in a contemporary way, because sometimes you get the yogic answers or you get it from the Bhagavad Gita or the sutras, and it doesn't really make sense. So I spent a lot of time breaking it down into a simplified system. And if we look at it, you know, we come from somewhere. We didn't exist 9 months later, boom.
Mm.
And there's this level of, you know, what we call the causal body, which is cosmic consciousness. And then the astral body, the subtle body, which is cosmic intelligence. Now, that consciousness and that intelligence gets downloaded into the physical body, meaning that we have access to that universality, to that singularity. But then the sensory nerves pick it up and we go out and have experiences in the world. And this is where our problem starts, because we have these experiences and then we go, oh, I like that one. I want to repeat it again. Or I don't like that. And we try to move away from it. So over time, we start to identify with all of these fragmentations of consciousness, and everything becomes fragmented, and everything becomes narrowed down into a very pinpoint of what's possible. And then those things that we're chasing after, if we get them, we feel good. And the things that we don't want, if they're present, we suffer. So we're constantly going through this cycle of pain and pleasure, and just chasing after stuff and thinking that if I just keep moving the world around and shifting it, I can get this sustained pleasure and move away from the pain. But it doesn't work that way. And so yoga is just reversing the process. It's pulling the senses away from the objects of the world, okay? Optimizing your body to support a higher frequency, a higher vibration, making the breath serene and calm, balancing the nervous system so that we can support that higher frequency, bringing your mind back into a single point and taking all that fragmented consciousness and bringing it back into the midbrain, which is meditation. So then we start to unify our consciousness again and recognize who we are, that singularity. That singularity in yoga we would call Brahman. Christians might call God, Chinese might call the Tao. It's just different names, but it's this process of coming back to who we truly are as consciousness, as intelligence, as stable states of joy, love, compassion, equanimity. That's the journey. And it's really not that hard. You just have to understand it, and you need the correct roadmap to take you there.
Yeah, I love that. And it's very much this process of this practice of remembering. And I feel like, that can happen every day, or that can happen every time we come into our mat, and we remember and then we forget, right? And then we go with that connection and feeling and remembering our wholeness, and then we go into distortion. Can you speak a little bit about where the ego comes into play with all of this? And is this the inevitability on this path of having an ego death and dissolving the ego? And, what are some of the things that we can do to approach that from quite a holistic perspective?
Yeah. Well, the yogis talk about it. Jesus talks about it in the Bible, being born twice. And, what that means is that you die to the ego. You surrender the ego and allow that, surrender to that intelligence and consciousness that I was talking about. You surrender your will over and allow how that communication comes through is intuition. It's your insights, your inspiration that's coming through, and surrendering to that and living from that place. That's what we would call a tantrika, life meeting life, just responding to life as it unfolds through intuition and insight. And I lost the track of the first part of the question.
Well, I guess, what is the ego, and how do we, it's because we hear this thrown around so much, right? And I think it has so many different connotations and people struggle with it. What does it mean for you? What is this ego that, is ultimately that we need to be able to, as you said, right, have the death of it? And I know that that is part of this awakening process that we are on, and we can tend to get pulled back into identifying or over identifying with the ego. And I feel like that's a lot of how we forget who we are.
Yeah. It's just a narrowed down, the ego is just a narrowed down framework of what's possible in the world. And it's narrowed down to our particular preferences, how we're perceiving the world, how we view the world, how our world is shaped and what we believe about it. And yeah, we're just trying to, so in yoga, we would say you have an I to survive and you have an I to evolve. And so when we're just surviving and we're going through life, we just get caught up in our same conditioning, our same habits. We would call them samskaras in yoga. And those habits lead to certain actions. In yoga, we would call it karma. And in unconscious life, those actions reinforce the habits. And those habits lead back to the same action. And we just become circular and we get stuck in this circle and trapped. And some people do that their whole life. But once you go onto a spiritual path, and that's what yoga is, then we want to use the eye to evolve. We want to start to shine a torchlight on who I am, how I am in the world, how I interact with the world, what's useful, not useful. How do I begin to set aside all of these things that I am not?
Mm, mm,
And this is the journey. We have this physical body so we can have experiences, so we can operate in the world of diversity and opposites. And when we have experiences, that is our karma. And we're meant to learn through the experiences that we have, understand them, integrate them, let them go, and move on. And then to the next thing and to the next thing. And as we can progressively do that, then the I starts to dissolve. The ego identifications start to dissolve. They have less grasp on us. They hold us less in their grip. And then we open to more possibilities. Instead of this is how life has to be, this is how it is,
mm, mm,
we open to possibility. We become more inclusive. So ego is exclusive. It's separate.
mm,
As we move towards yoga, we become more inclusive. We open up. And ultimately, we recognize that we are all just one. We're just all expressions of the one.
mm,
And so that is ultimate inclusivity when
mm.
you're back in that place of yoking everything, joining all of these seemingly separate aspects of ourselves and yoking them and bringing them back into that singularity. So instead of fragmentation, we have unity and we operate life from that place. And that becomes beautiful.
Mm.
That just becomes an embracing of life.
And yet so challenging because in so many ways, life makes it really easy for us to forget that we are a part of the oneness.
Yeah, it's designed to do that. It's designed to keep
Why? Why do you
separate
think that is?
because this is our school, this is our playground, it's our school, the way to learn. And if you look at anything, e- everything is energy. Yes, science tells us this, the spiritual systems, the ancients tell us this. But if you look at the chakra system, at the top, it's light. Energy is light.
Mm,
And when light energy is slowed down, it becomes matter. It becomes more dense. But the cool thing is, density, when you speed it up and you vibrate it at a higher level, it becomes light again. So we've got this myriad of experiences where a lot of people get caught up in the density into the material and think that's all there is.
yeah.
They're just trying to move through this world and try to make the material shape to the way that we want it. And then everything is designed in a lot of ways purposely to keep us in the material and not evolve into this higher understanding. Because if you keep people in density, if you keep them lost, if you keep them fearful, if you keep them down powered, then it's easier to control, it's easier to manipulate. A lot of the foods that are put out there for us are low density foods. And even if you look at it, if you Google fast food and you look and you bring up images, all of the fast food primarily is orange, red, and yellow, which is all the lower three chakras. It's density. It's meant to keep you in
Mm,
density.
mm,
So we're trying to just, what Sadhguru would say, is become more subtle human beings. We're trying to raise our vibration, do habits that raise our vibration. Yoga every day, all of the practices of yoga are designed to raise our vibration. And if you do that over and over and over again, then you lock in a higher frequency, yeah, which you don't lose. Yeah, and then you do more habits, higher vibrational habits and you'll lock in a higher frequency. And that's the cool thing, because once your frequency is locked in at a higher level, then everything through the law of resonance, everything at that frequency starts to come into your field.
Mm.
So where did this come from? It was already there. You just couldn't resonate to it. The thing is, I always say, you get in the elevator, you go up to the third floor and you've got to let a few people out.
Yeah.
You go up because as you raise your frequency, yeah, there's a process of letting go as well. You have to let go of the things that no longer serve you. And to your question, that's why we have difficulty, because we have attachments to the things. We have addictions to the things. And
Yeah.
a lot of that lower density stuff is designed to keep you addicted and keep you in a lower um, vibrational mentality. Because once we raise it, you come back into self-sovereignty, you come back into your own inner authority. And when you have that, no one needs to tell you anything, right? You know that guidance is there. So we just want to lock that in and keep locking those frequencies, and then everything opens up and opens up and opens up because of the resonance. Yeah. The other stuff still exists because other people have to go through their journeys. It's just that we're not involved in it. Yeah. So we have
Yeah,
this.
I love this. And is this, this is like shifting to those new timelines and new realities that we have available to us, like that going from that. Are you meaning going from that 3D to 5D kind of frequency? Is that what you're referring to as well in this?
Yeah. So, 3D, kind of where we are, where we get caught up in the material. And I would say 4D is when you're starting to wake up. So you're awakening, you're starting to question. So there's a lot of stuff going on in the world at the moment, and the veil's being lifted. Like
Yeah.
all of this stuff. And we can call it evil if you like. We can call it low vibrational. We can call it manipulation and control. We can call it, lying. And it was all designed to keep in the 3D. But now the veil's being lifted and people are waking up. And that waking up process is what I would call 4D. And then 5D is when we integrate it into those higher frequencies and we're living like that, all of the time.
And living simultaneously with, when we talk about the new earth, it's initially when I would hear about the new earth, I thought, oh, we're going to go to this new place and it's going to be amazing and everyone's going to get along and it's going to be peace on earth. And what I understand about the new earth is it's here now, it's available to us now, and we can have these coexisting realities in a way, depending on how you choose to, as you said, look after yourself and raise up your frequency. And I think that that's amazing. And for a lot of people, this awakening can be a very um, scary time, particularly, as you said, with the veil being thin and our eyes opening up to see that, yeah, there's deception and there's distortion and there's darkness. So, what can you offer to people in terms of, I guess, ways to look after themselves and practices during this time of awakening?
Yeah. Well, if you look at the 8 limb system of yoga, it's giving you those things. It's saying with the yamas, it's like get your external world working for you. Yeah. So take away any harming that you do in your life, right? Bring integrity back into your life. Allow everyone to have their experiences. Use your creative energy wisely, your sexual energy wisely. Non-attachment. Because if you do those things, the external world is going to support you a lot more, and there's going to be less obstacles. And so when there's less obstacles, you go deeper. And then niyamas is saying simplify your life, be content. And then saying purify your nervous system. It's saying self-awareness, be aware of yourself and surrender to a higher principle. Then get your body, optimize your body, get your body in order. So health is super, super important.
Mm.
Yeah. Understanding health and understanding how we fuel our bodies, what we put into our bodies, how we hydrate our bodies, how we move our bodies is super, super important. It's not just the asana. See, we can see a lot of people doing asana, they can be very proficient at it, but they have a really bad diet. It
Mm.
doesn't work. It's
Or
things
unhealthy
have
relationships, or right, like,
all of that stuff.
yeah. Mm.
And you see in the yoga world, a lot of people are drawn to, the stimulating practices, the strong practices, the practices that are entertaining, the practices that are kind of power stuff like a workout. And the thing about that is a lot of people are imbalanced in a sympathetic way. They're overstimulated. So they do these practices because it feels like it's balancing to how they are, right?
Mm,
It matches how they are. But it's exactly what they don't need. They need more of the moon practices, the yin stuff, to rest down the nervous system, come into deep neurophysical rest. Um, and so they're doing these practices, but they're also doing, these diets and habits that are not so good. They're going out and taking party drugs and all these sorts of things.
mm,
It's not that you can't, it's not you can't just do a bit. You've got to do the whole thing.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it doesn't mean you're meant to be a perfect being, but you want to take away these habits. You want to take these things that take you away from God, from unification.
Yeah.
And after the body, it says, well, yeah, you've got to get your energy right. So you've got to look up, you've got to understand your breath. You understand how that works because it's not only carrying oxygen, it's carrying the life force, the electricity that switches everything on. It's working directly with your nervous system, which you have to balance. And then it's saying, bring your mind to a single point instead of being scattered all over the place. At the moment in House of Yoga, we're doing a dopamine challenge, reset, 7 days. And
Mm,
even after 3 days, people are going, I feel so much more relaxed, so much
mm,
quieter. And dopamine is, if you don't know, is your reward system. So when you do something challenging and you achieve it, you get some dopamine. But
mm,
now you get all this what I call cheap dopamine, where you scroll on your phone, or you
mm,
have bad foods, or adult entertainment, stuff like this, and it becomes a distraction, and you lose focus, you lose that single pointedness. But yoga is saying that's essential. You need to bring your mind to a single point. Focus is very important, what they call shittao, a stable, tranquil mind. Right? And it requires effort. And then meditation it is effortless concentration, and then samadhi, where we start to merge. So
mm.
it gives us this whole practical system from our external world to getting our own house in order, optimizing your body, activating, upgrading your energy, reprogramming your mind, and then opening into higher and higher possibilities.
I love that, getting your house in order. Is that where House of Yoga came from?
No, house, house of yoga is just, it's more like all things yoga under one roof.
Yeah. But I
Yeah.
love the way, this asana, the physical practice, the one limb, right, is the one limb, and yet, as we know in the West, it's very overemphasized. I mean, that is what yoga is, to the point that a lot of people that go to a yoga class would have no idea about all these other invisible aspects, non tangible aspects of yoga. And even in a lot of the teacher trainings that we see, and there's, so many teacher trainings, as we've spoken about, completely oversaturated. However, honoring really the true teachings of yoga, and what we're speaking about here, it tends to be few and far between. And I think because there is such an emphasis still in our world around the physicality and the physical aspects. And it's interesting when you said about, going, some of the practices that you're going to aren't necessarily the ones that are for you. And I often say that to my students, like, quite often the ones that you are drawn to and attracted to are the ones that aren't necessarily going to be the best for you. So one thing that, we've spoken about before that has had this sudden surgence, it's is the breath, right? And the breath practices, and all of a sudden, everybody is a breath coach or wanting to be a breath coach, and it's very popular. The breath, why do you think that is all of a sudden? What's your perspective on that? Because I mean, I love your teachings with the breath. It really honors the yogic path.
It's popular simply because it's trending. And so what people do in any of the industries, the fitness industry, the yoga industry, they'll pick up on it and they go, this is trending. I got to, do a weekend workshop on this. And that's the problem, because people do weekend workshop and then they start teaching it.
Yeah.
And they're doing it with a very, very limited, narrow framework. They do a weekend workshop and they think they know all the answers. Yeah. But there's so much to it. And our breath is so powerful. And Yeah, it creates problems because, for example, in the yoga space, there's a lot of these breath journeys that
Mm,
weekends they're doing, which is all hyperventilation breathing. And hyperventilation breathing is seriously not good for you, right? It's seriously not good. And then with the hyperventilation breathing, people are having catharsis. And so with the
mm,
limited understanding, you think, wow, that's amazing. They're having all this emotional release. No, they're just getting re-traumatized. And
mm.
because you can't integrate a new way of being by being in a sympathetic state. It doesn't work. That can only happen in parasympathetic.
Yeah,
The taking on the new understanding and a new habit and a new way of being into long-term memory has to happen through neurological rest. It has to happen through a parasympathetic system. It doesn't happen by being in fight or flight. It
yeah,
doesn't work that way. And so people at the end of it, they're like, yeah, that was really good. Like a bit ungrounded, a bit weird. Yeah. It's like- so um yeah, and then people jump on it and then they keep doing these things. There was a big trend on bunders not so long ago, and people are doing all this on their Instagram and their social media stuff. And I guess that's a bit another big part of why it gets pushed is because we have access to these informations and
mm,
we see people doing it, we see hot men and women doing it in their, little outfits and we go, wow, I want to be like them. I want to do what they're doing.
mm.
Should should's not the right word, but maybe rather than looking at those, look at the men and women that embody enlightenment, you know, like you know, Anandamaya Ma, like a my teacher Sadhguru, like, Ramana Maharshi. They look at those people because if you're doing yoga, they're the people,
Mm,
right? They're the people that got to the highest level and created this roadmap for us.
mm,
They're the people you should be looking to, as mentors and understand what they're saying. Because the thing is, if you look at Paramahansa Yogananda and you look at autobiography of a yogi, I mean, he was the first guy that popularized it in the West, but he's saying very, very clearly in autobiography of a yogi, make the breath less, make it
yeah.
slower, right? Less breaths, slower, calmer. That's it's all there. Yeah. And if you look at them, if you spend time with them, they're not doing any of that stuff that we're doing in the West.
Mm,
Not.
mm,
All of the older, masters, you never see them doing any asana practice. They may have when they were younger, but you don't see that. They're primarily doing, all the invisible stuff. They're working in the, meditations and kriyas and different stuff. And whoever knows whatever they're doing, they're operating at a totally different level than what
mm.
we're aware of.
So it's, I think it's great in the way that the physical practice becomes the gateway for many, right? And maybe at the moment, breath is another gateway for people to start to tap in. And then obviously, it's about hoping that they'll go a little deeper and experience that a little bit more. And I know that this is some of what you do in your work as well with your yoga mastery and the House of Yoga in taking students deeper and teachers, which I think is so fantastic. How has your practice shifted now, Mark? I mean, you've been teaching for so long, and I'm sure you've had different iterations of what yoga means to you. I mean, what is it today that's so important? What does your practice, I guess, look like today, and how's that shifted?
I probably haven't done any, asana for 10 years. I
Mm,
did a lot when I was younger. And it's kind of like what you said, the body, the physical body, in the Yoga Sutras, they make it steady and comfortable, right? Yeah. And the idea of that is so you don't have any play of the opposites in the physical body. So you can sit for an hour, 2 hours,
mm,
and the body doesn't disturb you at all, right? No sore neck, no sore back, no sore hips. So then when you can do that, the body becomes a gateway to the divine, to the mystical, to the subtle body. And that's what, when you do pranayama correctly, it becomes a gateway to the causal body, right? And then the causal body to the beyond. So I primarily work with Kriya. and Tantra. And I I'm always just working, bringing my fragmented consciousness back in, right? Centralizing it in the brain and the spinal cord, magnetizing this channel we call Brahmanadi, right, back into that singularity, taking all that fragmented consciousness, bringing it back up into the midbrain, because the midbrain and all the structures of the midbrain, the pituitary, the pineal, the optic thalamus, this is where all the magic happens. This is the gateway, the void to go beyond. And so bringing that all back in to a single point and staying at that point there. And then what happens is when you do that, the light of consciousness arises. They call it jyoti. And that's just your consciousness reflecting back to you. It's a total thing. If you're practicing correctly for any length of time, you'll start to see those lights and comes into a 5-pointed star. And you start to, the outside starts to stop drawing you, become less disturbed by it, less affected, less involved. And you're simply connected to that divine will or that consciousness, and you're operating from that place. Yeah. And so my practice formally is doing that. And then my practice moment to moment is try to surrender to that will rather than trying to make something happen. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I still work and I still create content. And I still probably get a bit too busy and all those sorts of things. But yeah, that's the practice more and more, just to surrender to that process.
I love that. It's so talking my language with that. And it's then, you know, this practice of surrender, and I've spoken about it a bit on the podcast as well, because it seems to be where a lot of us are guided to, when we really tune in a lot to that higher consciousness or to your guides or to that guidance system. A lot of the messages, often I know they are for me, is to let go and is to surrender. And this is about really handing over to the guidance that then can come through, right? So opening up that vessel and for the guidance to come through. And I just think that that's so beautiful. I love the way that you've articulated it. And as a teacher as well, I mean, a lot of the work that you do, Mark, is in supporting primarily yoga teachers, right, to up level and to be able to, I guess, hold space in a more refined way. This feels so fundamental. What do you feel like is so important right now for any teacher who has been of service, or anyone really that's called to be of service and is holding space for other people? What's important in terms of how we are to best serve at the moment, and hold space for others and support this journey of awakening and transformation that we're all on here together?
The yoga industry has changed a lot over the last 4 years, like a lot of industries. And what used to work isn't working so much.
Mm,
We're seeing all that time. We're seeing that studio model falling down. Studios are closing. The classes aren't working because it's totally oversaturated, and you're competing with the fitness industry because we've just brought it down into an alternate physical offering, and teacher trainings because again saturated. The entry point into running teacher trainings was so diluted, and Yoga Alliance is a big part of that problem.
mm,
And so, what do we do now? And so, for me, a lot of the movement out now where you're going to be successful is to create a personal brand. And what I mean by that is there's two things: create a personal brand and teach a total yoga transformation. Yeah. So that you're using all of the aspects of it. Because then when you teach total yoga transformation, so many people are falling off the treadmill now. They can't keep up. They're getting lost, they're getting stuck, and they want more than physical. They want emotional support, mental health is going through the roof.
mm,
And so when you understand that and then you bring it into a personal brand, meaning that you look at your life and you look at your journey and you look at, what's it been about? What have been my lessons? What have I learned? What are the tools that I've gathered? Right? That's a hint, right? It's not by accident. It's that once you get all of that, then all the people that are following on the path behind you, you can be a mentor or a guide for them so they don't have to fall in those same holes that you did. So then a personal brand is, okay, taking the umbrella of yoga as a total yoga transformation system, and then bring yourself in authentically, having a starting point, like where people are starting on their journey, right, that you went through, and the end point, and then have a whole bunch of programs and practices within that are taking them from that A to B point.
Mm.
So we help teachers create, master classes, workshops, retreats, online offerings, offline offerings based on their brand, and bringing and inserting them authentically into that brand, their stories, who they are, their yoga journey, what they've learned, what they've understood, other teachers that they've brought in, other learnings that they've had. So that when you talk like that, you can show that you've walked in their shoes. And when you walk in their shoes, people feel understood. And when people feel understood, they buy. I mean, that's the movement of it. And I always talk about, I taught aerobics in the late 80s, early 90s, and
Oh
it
my gosh.
was.
Have you got any videos to show us?
I wish I did because I'd love to use them. I would love to do it because you got all your fluoro on and your white Reeboks and skin splints and your headbands and the
I
whole
can
thing.
picture it.
I taught at Aerobic 2000, Tarrant Point, and
Good.
it's sort of what's happening in the yoga now. That it was very trendy. It was a much shorter burn, but it's very trending. And then more and more studios opened, and then more and more people got certified to become an aerobics teacher or group fitness. But then eventually, got saturated. So
Mm.
then it got saturated. The studios were closed, and the trend kind of died down. And so there was less opportunities for the teachers. Pricing went down. This is one of the big problems for yoga teachers now. They're being commoditized, right? Because it's saturated,
Mm.
and you've just become a commodity. And when you become a commodity, then it's based on price. And when it's based on price, it's just a race to the bottom, right?
Mm.
We just see the prices going down. We see, teaching classes rates plateaued out or even going down, all of this sort of stuff. So what the smart teachers did it then that were teaching aerobics is that they positioned themselves as authorities. And that's when the PT industry started out to become personal trainers. And they position themselves as an authority in certain areas, you know,
Mm.
whether it's, build your booty or, building, calisthenics or bodybuilding or whatever it is. And then they had their certifications to go with that. Now, they were seen as authorities and experts, and because of that, they could charge more. And because of that, they run workshops and they were doing the thing that they love doing
Mm.
rather than just teaching a generic class, same stuff every day over and over again, where the studio dictates what you can teach and what you can't teach. Yeah, which is fair enough. It's their studio, their business, but you're bound by that. When you step outside of that, then you do it from your own heart, your own passion. And then the smart ones, when the internet came along, is then they created online brands and online programs, and many of them are, famous and very well off.
Mm. Mm.
But that's the same opportunity or placing now, which that's what I call, yoga coaching or a personal life coach or a personal yoga trainer.
Mm.
That's where I feel like the yoga space is going now. Yeah.
I love this, Mark, and I just feel like this is so important because there are a lot of, let's say, for want of a better word, kind of cookie cutter trainings, right? And the thing that I've always loved with training teachers and what I felt is really important, and you're speaking to this, it's honoring that we each have our own story, we each have our own life, that we've been prepared through our life with skills and experience that we then have to bring through to help us to lead and support others from our own rich life authentic experience, right? That's the best training that you can get. But
Yeah.
many don't quite know or have the courage, the confidence to really tap into that and understand that, oh my gosh, yeah, I've actually got what I need here. I've just got to learn how do I, as you say, like turn that into a brand and market that and upskill that in a way. So I think that it's just incredible that you have these offerings available to be able to support people to do that. I know I've had different discussions with teachers who, as you say, are tired of just going and, taking 10 or 20 classes a week at a studio or at a gym and not getting paid enough. And, and I believe, like I'm sure you do as well, that we create our reality. And as you said, we're energy and anything is possible. So I think that that's incredible. And I know you have a couple of modalities or a couple of pathways to be able to access that, right, with your within House of Yoga.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, in both. I mean, we focus on House of Yoga, which is a mentorship for yoga teachers, and that works on all levels, including the business. You know, how to create what we call your
Mm.
signature solution, how to bridge that to clients, how to deliver that. You know, through have a delivery system for that. And in what we call Yoga Mastery 300, the 300-hour training, that's part of it as well. Like through the training, I help you build your personal brand, and then your signature solution, and then we can help you build out, for example, funnels and all of that sort of stuff, websites and
Mm.
funnels and those sorts of things, and how to deliver a 5-day challenge, how to deliver a 6-week course, how to deliver retreats and workshops, how to create master classes, all of those things. Because see, the cool thing is we're at a place where we have this opportunity which we haven't really had before. Whereas once you understand your niche and your particular area of delivering it, then you can target those people, like globally. You've got
Mm.
access to target those people globally, and then serve them at the highest level. So when you work online, you can work with a lot of people. I always say work one to many. Yes, do your offline stuff, and I love doing it. But the biggest bang for your buck is working, online. And
Yeah.
so, but yes, I do both.
Mm.
But it's good to do. And I think the teachers have to understand that, when you're working for the studio, you're still an entrepreneur. You're still working for yourself, right? But you just rely on the studio to do that side of things.
Mm. Mm.
But it's just having like understanding that process is not that difficult. And I also say if you're teaching classes, stay teaching the classes and then build, once you have the understanding of it, build your brand, because it takes a little bit of time for most people to get traction.
Yeah.
I mean, I had, but my sister, she has a thing, fabulous 50s, and she started a YouTube channel, and then within about um, just over 12 months, she had 1 million subscribers.
Wow.
And so, what I want to say about that is, she just hit the right target, and she spoke to the right things. And when you can get that right, then boom. Now, there's certain niches that are much more specific, like what I do. You kind of alluded to it before, that if I taught handstands and doing fancy arm balances, it'd have a lot more clients. People would jump in and do that thing. But once you start teaching the invisible aspects, like mind, consciousness, breath, prana, then you start to move outside of the bell curve a little bit. But the people outside of that bell curve are very passionate. They're very passionate, and they are very committed to what they're doing. So you may have a smaller audience, but you're working with that audience that's very loyal and committed. So it just depends. My sister's audience is very generic, but
I think it's about really honoring your heart and your passion, and for me, being a yoga teacher, it's always been in the invisible. I mean, that's what I'm drawn to, and that's coming from having sold the yoga studios last year and now doing it all online. I mean, that is where I'm letting myself go to, and it's where the secret sauce is really is in the invisible. And I know for you, Mark, I mean, you live over in Bali and you've created this beautiful lifestyle for yourself, so you're clearly an incredible creator and an incredible manifester. And you spoke earlier about these practices on raising your frequency, which I just want to come back to briefly, because you mentioned something about as your frequency raises through these practices like breath work or your kriyas, eating the foods doing all the things that what I would say is that light you up, right? And that bring you joy. I know you've got the surfboard in the background there, so I know that that's a regular part of your practice. Um, so
Yep.
how have you done this in terms of, well, what do you oh, there's a number of them, okay.
There's 12 through the house.
What are your kind of key things if people a lot of people in my audience are wanting to create life on their terms and create their own reality, and I know that you've done it against the grain, and I think that that's amazing. What can you offer people from that, from your experience in being a manifestor, whether you know it or not, which I'm sure you do know.
Like on how to create your reality.
Yeah.
Well, they, there's this sort of saying, they're saying, our thoughts um, create our words, and our words create our actions, and our actions create our habits, and our habits create our character, and our character creates our destiny. So the starting place is your thoughts. And this is what yoga, the definition of yoga, yoga ha chitta vritti narodaha. Chitta is the field of awareness, the stillness. Chitta are the waves on the surface. And narodaha means mastery, or to settle down. So we're trying to settle down all of this disturbance on the surface so that we can come to the pure awareness underneath that we are. And that's very important, because you want to manifest your life from the intuition that comes through, the inspiration that comes through. You want to manifest from that place, and then you want to match your words to it. And because those two are creating vibrations in the field, and everything in form starts as vibration. Yeah? And so those vibration, when we hold those vibrations, it will eventually come into physical form.
Mm.
So we have to look at that, and then we have to support, as we said, everything to keep that vibration high. And then when you're doing it and you're thinking of like manifesting, gratitude for what you already have is very important. Prayer is very important. Prayer in the sense of, people do prayer to ask what they don't have. Prayer is to like is to thank, and to help me connect higher. Please help me connect higher. Help me connect to whatever you want to call God, whatever the term you want to use it. That's the purpose of that. And then, visualization. Like all of these things are part of that visualization, affirmation, all of those things. But the important thing is it has to be done in like the now, as if it's already
Yeah.
happened. Yes, it's not like, well, yeah, someday I'll have this, because if you're visualizing and saying someday I'll have $10 million, then someday you will, but the someday is always the someday. So you've got to visualize it, and you have to do it in high energy. You want to feel the energy overflowing. So you're visualizing, you've done the prayer, you've done that, you're using your words and actions right, you're seeing it in the moment, but you're doing it with high energy, that
Mm.
it's overflowing. And then 10, 15 minutes, boom, let it go. Don't
Yeah.
even think about it again. And then surrender to that intelligence organizing it for you. If you start to doubt it, well, how come I haven't got my 10 million yet? Then it kind of cuts it
Yeah.
in the way. And I think we have to clean up our lives as well. I mean, acid is a big problem. If we bring it down to practical levels, like acidosis in the body, but it's not just acid foods, it's acid thinking, it's acid emotions, it's acid water, it's acid air. Like all of those, the body doesn't differentiate. It's just one funnel, and it just drops it into the body.
Mm.
And acidosis is, it breaks down the body. It keeps us in density and lower vibration, and it's the foundation for all of the illness in the body. Then we get acidosis, we get inflammation, then we get mucus, and it goes into all the spaces of the body, and it creates all these problems. So we have to start to look at that. Our blood and our lymph is the only two alkaline things in the body. So if you can get your blood and your lymph correct, yeah, by eating. So you got to look at your thoughts. Are they in the direction of happiness? Are they in the direction of inclusiveness? My emotions, how I'm hydrating myself, my living environment. And then the food's very important because we are electrical beings. So you want to high electrical foods, and the ones that are closest to the sun, fruits and vegetables.
Mm, mm,
Like, I don't care what you eat. I'm not judgmental about what you're eating, but it's very clear. Stop eating stuff on the supermarket shelves, preservatives, colorings, artificial this, artificial that. They're deadly. They're poisonous. They
mm,
bring your vibration down.
mm.
And the reason I just emphasize this is because you can manifest and do all those things, but it has to, you've got to bring it down to the fundamentals. Yeah. Like what you're doing regularly all day. And those things are important. You've got to move your body. You know, you've
Mm.
got to look after yourself, and we need to come more into an alkaline state. If you look at the yogis, the masters, they're just alkaline. Boom. Yeah.
Mm,
The
mm,
alkaline inside the body is an acid medium, but the fluids of the body, when they're balanced, is alkaline. And we're operating this alkaline medium where everything's just peaceful and beautiful, and yeah, and then manifest your life from there.
yeah.
Yeah. Because otherwise you're like, why hasn't it fucking happened yet? What have I got to do? What am I not learning? Oh, or you get depressed. I never get what I want.
Yeah, yeah, and then it just becomes a vicious cycle. I love that, Mark. That's all of those key ingredients, and huge takeaway from this episode is really about that with lifting up our vibration and raising our frequency. And when we do that, I mean, this is how we heal. This is how we heal ourselves. This is how we heal, and how we raise the vibration of the collective, which is what's needed now more than ever. So thank you for what you do and for your work, and for the way that you are leading. And how can people find you if they want to get in touch with you, if they want to take one of your trainings, or get into your membership program? What's the best way?
Yogacoach.com is our site. We have two main offerings. The 300-hour training, it's called Yoga Mastery 300. That is running from August to November. It's
Okay.
a live online training, so you can check it out on the website. And we have House of Yoga, which is a yoga mentorship site where you have a wealth of content in there, but you also have a live training every month. You have a live Q&A every month to ask all your teaching questions, practice, business, lifestyle. We had podcasts with guest teachers doing stuff. It's a yearly subscription or a monthly subscription into that, very reasonably priced. But we'll give you a link for your audience, and they can do a
We'll pop it
special
in the show
special deal.
notes. Yeah.
We'll do a special deal for your audience as well,
Okay,
if
I'll pop that in
you
the
have
show
any of
notes.
those options.
Amazing, Mark. Just to finish off, that the way that you taught the breath, and just doing that weekend workshop for you with you, and I think my husband did it as well. I still haven't gone and bought the mouth tape. I really need to do that. I'm noticing that I'm mouth breathing at night still, but I'll get to there. But it was really transformational, and it just softened it for me as well, which is beautiful. So I think you're amazing. Thank you so much for saying yes to this. This has
Appreciate
been
that.
incredible. And I feel like I want to listen to this all over again because there's so many great takeaways.
Beautiful. Thank you. Appreciate it. Love having the chat. Love sharing the message. We need to get it out to the yoga world to take those next steps, because, like you said, we have this incredible foundation of yoga teachers sitting underneath there that have gone through the entry door. They've entered through the door, and now it's very important to keep walking through the door and going into the new rooms and new places and start exploring. And then, yeah, the power's in the invisible. And once you can have the same confidence to teach the invisible stuff as you do with the physical stuff, everything just goes to another level.
Yeah, that's where the transformation happens, isn't it? And I feel like yoga teachers are ready for this and are hungry for this, and it gets to be a lot easier than we make it out to be, right? And I
Yeah,
think that what I know happens when you do something like this, right? So doing a training with you and learning and understanding, you're up leveling yourself, you're raising up your own frequency, and that makes it so much easier to be able to then move through life and navigate through life, because then you just become, as you said, magnetic to the things that are on that frequency, which makes it so much more pleasant to then be able to move through life and attract in the aligned opportunities that are right for you, which is so important in being of service and in being a teacher.
it's true. And the other aspect of that is that the teachers don't teach it is because they don't have confidence because it wasn't taught in their teacher training per se. And but once you have a structure and a system, and then all the aspects are broken down into a very simple contemporary way of understanding it and what it does in the body in a way that you can then communicate it to your students with confidence as well, then
Mm,
that makes all of the difference.
mm,
It's just
mm.
simply having that roadmap laid out for you on how to take it further that you can follow and have confidence to do it.
And also to know that you're needed, right? That you're still very much needed. This isn't done, right? Yoga teachers are needed, probably more now so than ever. It's just about how do we pivot and how do we then expand in what we've already got access to, which is, as you say, just going to really take people so much deeper.
Yeah, you have to pivot. I mean, I've been teaching for like nearly 45 years, and I've had to pivot a number of times,
Mm,
obviously. Yeah. I've had two studios, bought and sold those, and created training packages. I've niched down into elite sport and into working with CEOs and working with disability. Most of my focus has been, educating teachers on that higher level. Um, but I'm always thinking of the pivot. Where's it going?
yeah.
And it's going to happen more as we go into AI more and into virtual reality and augmented reality. We're going to have to pivot. I mean, see, we're not too far down the track. We're going to be going into a virtual room as our avatar and teaching people around the world to their avatars, right? In a virtual yoga studio. And people go, "Oh my god, oh my god." It's it's okay. You just have to understand. You might draw a line at a certain point, but if you're serving people and you're benefiting them, right? But you're just doing it in like that virtual space as your avatar, right? Awesome,
Mm.
awesome, right? There's a line where you might draw where, okay, you get to be able to do this, you have to be chipped. Okay, that's my line. Yeah,
Mine too.
by doing those things because we have to educate because you understand like the virtual world or the metaverse, we may go, well, that's not a good thing, but understand there's going to be a yoga verse and there's going to be a
Mm,
well-being metaverse. So it's that fine edge of the sword, so you go into those places and serve people and stay away to the stuff that's just addictive and just keeps you walking around with goggles all day,
mm.
like people will be doing, sitting
Yeah,
in
that is
cafes.
wild. I don't know if I'm ready for that.
Yeah, well, it's coming down the pipe really soon. It's already happening. I've seen people, a few people walk around like that in Bali.
Wow.
Um, so it's coming down the track real soon, but it's just using it wisely, like anything. It's like using our mobile phones wisely. You
So
know,
how important do you think mentorship is and being in community right now?
I think it's absolutely a necessity.
Yeah,
I mean, I couldn't have got to where I've got in my understanding and my practice without my mentors slash teachers slash gurus.
yeah.
It's just it's not possible. And I've been blessed to have some amazing mentors and I have yoga masters and I always, the ones that I sort of sit with is the ones that I go, why? Why? And they answer me. They have the patience to answer all of my why questions.
Mm.
Um, because Western mind, in India, the guru tells them to do something, they go, okay, they just go do it. Right? And I did it because that was my path. But you do it and you embody the information and you can teach it. But Western mind wants to know why. If I say, do this Kriya and we're going to do in the chakras and we're going to visualize this shape and we're going to do this mantra, why? Why would I do that? You need to be able to have that answer for
Mm.
Western teaching,
Mm.
because if they don't understand it, they're not going to do it, mostly.
Mm. Mm.
So, yeah, a lot of what we've done is be able to answer those questions in a very simple way. Why? Yeah. Energy, when it vibrates, it creates a sound, right? The sound creates a form. That's the mantra. That's the yantra. Just very simple ways of explaining stuff.
Yeah, and none of this, well, a lot of this, you in a typical 200-hour training, you just don't have the capacity to really get to and experience. So I think that this is, yeah, so
Yeah.
important. And it's great to just be in your company and be in your energy because you're someone who has lived and breathed literally this pathway since you're a tot, right? And I mean, it's just that's quite rare. Really amazing.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at the 200-hour trainings, 200 hours, 160 face to face, probably 120 of those, 130 of those are physically based. The asana labs, the sequencing, the adjusting, all of that stuff. They'll do 30 hours on anatomy and physiology. The yogis never talked about it. I mean, this is just another example. I get why it gets taught, but what we want to do is we want to learn to look with different eyes. We want to see a body and see where his consciousness is moving. Where is energy moving or not moving? Where is consciousness moving and not moving? And then you design the physical practice to open the body to get the consciousness and the prana, electricity moving through the body again. That's the power.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Love it. Well, I'm going to come over to Bali. Just wanted to put that out there.
Oh, well, saying that, also with offerings, we have a retreat in September where we live, just 50 meters down the hill, but it's
Yeah,
beautiful,
great.
called Yama Resort, and it's called High on Life. And it's exactly what we've been talking about. The retreat is 1 week and it's about, raising your vibration. All these cool things that we're going to do are raising your vibration. We got saunas and ice baths and we're going to do the pranayama. We got electric foods. We got, music, fire ceremonies, waterfalls, all of that sort of stuff. And that's
Amazing.
September in Bali.
Amazing. So good. All right. Thank you so much, Mark. I know that surfboard is probably waiting to be ridden on. Is that what you say? To be surfed on.
Yep.
The waves are good. So thank you for your time this morning. It's been a lot of fun, and I'll connect with you. I'm sure either over in Bali or when you come out to Australia next, if that's on the cards.
Yeah, in 2025, next year we're looking at it. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. We'll keep an eye out for that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Hey guys, if you enjoyed this episode, I would really appreciate it if you could hit the follow button on whatever platform you are listening to it on. This ensures that this transmission can get out there into the world to those who need it, touch the hearts of those who could benefit from it. So please do that. Feel free to share it, review it, even better. And it just helps to really spread the love and keep this channel active. Thanks so much.